Alexander Hamilton was a Capricorn, and he had Venus retrograde right at 26 Capricorn. And that's so interesting to me because that's the Pluto placement of the declaration. And from this, we don't know his exact time of birth, but we do know that for sure at midnight, he was born January 11th, 1755. So they're just 1 year apart. He definitely has a moon in Capricorn. So he's born with the sun and Saturn also conjunct his sun in Capricorn, and the moon in Capricorn, and Venus retrograde in Capricorn. So he was super Capricorn. So having an Aquarius be so different, I feel like Alexander Hamilton being part of the, I guess you could say, the establishment of the country and the founding of it.
But he wasn't. Like, that's the funny thing,
I know, he
right?
really
Aaron
wasn't.
Burr was more the establishment. So on one hand, Aaron Burr would be upset that Alexander Hamilton was able to get into the position that he did, where he married into a very well-known, wealthy family. Then he is chosen in the revolution. It's like Aaron Burr had these more elite principles that weren't paying off for him. But then Alexander Hamilton got in there. It's like a weird sibling rivalry or something between the two of them.
It is. And also, because they're just born a year apart, their Jupiter positions are just one off. So Burr had Jupiter in Libra, but Hamilton had Jupiter in Virgo. And that meant both of them had sun-trine Jupiters. But Jupiter's in its detriment when it's in Virgo, because that's such a very specific, small Mercury-based place, and Jupiter is a Sag and very big Jupiter space. So Jupiter doesn't like to be in Virgo. So it's really interesting that they have similar traits and they have a lot of similarities, and they have a lot of Pluto connections too. But I would say that Aaron Burr had more of the Pluto connections, and he did come across as the one that, of course, was the one who killed in the duel. And Alexander Hamilton did have a Venus retrograde in his chart close to his sun. So that's I think one of the hard parts is there's a part there where, unfortunately, Alexander Hamilton, with Saturn conjunct his sun too, that's a harsh life. It's almost like his desires, they literally got stopped by a duel. And even with a sun trine Jupiter, just like Aaron Burr, they both have sun trine Jupiter, which to me is it is the most good luck transit anybody can be born under. But didn't work out. It's weird that two people that would duel, that would be a hard one, but I would have picked Aaron Burr based off the Jupiter being in its detriment for Alexander Hamilton, and with his Venus retrograde in Capricorn. And it's almost like I feel like Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr were both doing whatever they could to get attention. And that's what led to them both dueling.
I think Aaron Burr was Mars in Gemini.
Yeah, at the very last degree.
Is Hamilton a different Mars, or is he the same?
Hamilton's Mars was...
And would that have mattered in the duel?
Oh, well, that's a good question about the Mars. No, well, they had Mars in exact opposition. Hamilton was 28
that's so
Sag,
crazy.
and 29 Gemini was with Aaron Burr. So that's the tradition. That's an actual standoff. But of course, you'd think, well, maybe Mars and Sag would beat Mars and Gemini. But Mars and Gemini in a duel, it's about how quick you are to draw or how quick you are to shoot, or the location, and it's about aiming to a certain spot. So Mars and Sag, to be honest with you, I don't know if the full recollection is there, but I bet you Alexander Hamilton missed completely. Mars and Sag can miss
on
its
purpose,
mark.
I think. I mean, that's how, I guess there are different accounts of the duel, but Hamilton went into it saying, I'm not going to shoot him. I'm going to shoot in the air. And then when he sees that I shoot in the air, he's going to shoot in the air, right? He won't shoot me. That was his strategy, I guess, and it didn't work.
Well, no, I mean, especially because of Mars and Gemini, is if they say they're going to shoot you, they're going to shoot you. And that's the whole part of a Mars and Sag that has problems, is Mars is in Jupiter's house, and so it can't ever aim in the same direction, and it can't ever think about the same thing, or it has a belief system it comes up with this identity. They go, he won't shoot me. Right? It's like, what do you mean? You're in a duel, and you guys both shaved and got ready and got your guns ready. You know? You think he's just not going to shoot you? There's that sun in Capricorn with the sun or Saturn conjunct. And Saturn's the ruler of Capricorn. So he's a very tightwad. Like, man, he plays by the rules, which you should have played by the rules of the duel. To be honest with you, I think that maybe that would have been said by a friend or something like, oh, he wasn't going to shoot him. But a Mars and Sag does never aim well. It's like the archer, right? Doesn't mean you hit.
Be able to?
No, the idea of the archer is its aim doesn't mean it's going to hit the target, though. It's about the idea of aiming high in life.
Okay.
It's Capricorn, though, where you actually get to that place, which is never an easy place. But Mars and Sag is not a good target hitter. That's Gemini, and that's what, ironically enough, if we were to throw on top of Alexander Hamilton's chart, because he did beat him, is Aaron Burr's chart, you can see that the Mars of Aaron Burr, which is under this high vibe right here, is 29 Gemini, in exact opposition to the Mars of Alexander Hamilton. And so Mars in Gemini is a lot better at hitting the mark, a much better marksman, and in guns too, would actually be able to hit the target exact. He had a better chart overall because of his Sun trine Jupiter being within 1 degree and in better signs, whereas Jupiter within 2 degrees and in Earth signs, and with Saturn trine Jupiter, honestly, Hamilton should have never gotten into fights. If I go back to Alexander Hamilton, he had Mercury conjunct Mars, but with Mercury in Capricorn and Mars in Sag. So at the galactic center point, which back then it would have been a little bit, it would have been probably like 26, 27. But either way, it would have been a very weird position, especially with Chiron conjunct his Mercury. He would have thought he knew everything when really he didn't. And also he has Moon Chiron conjunct, which always is and we know this for sure because at midnight on January 11th, 1755, the moon would have been in Capricorn the whole 24 hours. So he's a Moon Saturn Capricorn, Moon Saturn Chiron Capricorn, Moon Saturn Chiron Venus retrograde Capricorn. And that's what I want to see here is when his Venus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at his progressions for Alexander Hamilton. And I'm doing this live. I didn't look this up. And I'm going to do him for July 11th, 1804. Oh, yeah. So his Venus had come direct and had returned, and then he dies. And I see this with a lot of Venus retrograde people, weird situations in their life, especially things that they want to have in their life not going well, people that have their Venus go retrograde. So look at that. His Venus returned finally to go past a place he had never gone before in 1803. And then just 1 year, 1 degree later, he's dead. With his moon in Libra, which could have been into Scorpio based off his time at midnight, I put it. Honestly, if he was born later, I wouldn't be surprised if his progressed moon was at the end of Libra coming into Scorpio, no matter what. There's a lot here, but a lot of it is not the best for him. I hate to say it, but that Venus retrograde was his curse in Capricorn. And it's weird because we had that same Venus retrograde that Alexander Hamilton was born with in 1755 in December of 2021, right there at 26 degrees. To be born with a Venus retrograde, you have to be one of, if you were to think of every 18 months, Venus goes retrograde, and it goes retrograde, there's only, if you think of every 18 months out of all the people that are born, there's just this one little moment in time of when the 40 days and 40 nights of the Venus retrograde. So there's only 40 days every 18 months with people born with Venus retrograde. And in his case, in Capricorn, having Saturn there, having a Chiron there, his moon, and to see it return a year before his death, and when it finally went to the space he's never felt before direct, he died.
Wow.
And I'm using Venus cycles of relating him to our time, and it's kind of crazy to see we're in the exact same Venus retrograde that we were in at the beginning of this new year. And then he also has that on the Constitution of America, which he actually did bring a different view into the Constitutional Convention.
Both Aaron Burr and Hamilton had that sense of urgency. Do you think that's just because of their younger age, their generation, or is there something else?
Yeah, I would say they're both ambitious, but Alexander Hamilton was much more skillful at his ambition and staying on getting every target in his life except shooting, every target of his goals one step at a time done and completed into the next, and knew how to work the system. Where I would say that Aaron Burr was somebody who knew his ambitions and had big dreams just like Alexander Hamilton, but was sloppier about doing it and was much more of a momentary person than a planned out person. So in the moment, better in a duel, but in the duel of politics, worse.